Welcome into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley. A victorious Monday for Texas A&M as they close out the season with a 38-23 win over number 5 LSU, spoiling their playoff hopes in the process. Brian, a lot more positive than we've had in a while to be able to talk about on a Monday. How's your weekend?
Oh, it's good. Had some Thanksgiving time with family and got a chance to watch the A&M game. And I know fans, they may think it's a double-edged sword. Get the victory over a top 5 LSU team, but then maybe it causes Jimbo to be like, oh, my offense works just fine. However, we'll just alleviate some of the concerns there and say we would still be very shocked if there was not a new play calling offense coordinator coming in. So.
No doubt. I think that's one thing we've consistently heard is there's certainly going to be changes, especially at the play calling front. And did think it was interesting last week. Jimbo Fisher on his radio show did talk about for the first time how the job has gotten a lot bigger now, and he wouldn't necessarily have a problem being a CEO and head coach, given everything that we've talked about with NIL now and the transfer portal and recruiting and social media. There's just so much going on. But you're right. This offense clicked at a level that we hadn't seen so far this year. They hadn't scored over 31 points all season long, hadn't scored over 21 against or 28 against an FBS opponent. And it started with Devon Achane, who was just brilliant with a career high 220 yards and 2 touchdowns on 38 carries. Didn't even practice until Wednesday, and after he'd missed the past 2 games. Just remarkable what he was able to come back and do, and a credit to the type of kid you and I both know that he is to come back in a game that didn't have any bowl implications on the line or anything like that, and to have 38 carries was tremendous.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a chance he definitely declares for the NFL since he's eligible. I don't think it's necessarily a done deal. They'll get they'll get the grades and things like that from the NFL soon. But if that was his last game, what a last game to have. A career high 215 yards rushing and doing so on a bum leg that, I mean, he was in a walking boot until not too long ago. So, yeah, there was no personal reason for him needing to come back to do that. But, I mean, if he would have been in a game against Auburn 2 weeks ago, I mean, it's likely an A&M win. And, while Wickman played well and Moose Muhammad had some great catches, I mean, this game against LSU was all Achane as well. I mean, without that 215 yards, Amari Daniels had a couple flashes, but, yeah, without Achane, they don't pull that upset. So, yeah, that was huge to get him to come back and just to do so selflessly.
No doubt. And he did kind of talk about the future and said he'll sit down with his family and Jimbo Fisher and said it would be kind of a tough decision in terms of how much he loves the 12th man and how much he's loved playing at A&M. So he's going to be one guy that fans will obviously watching. There's a couple guys with decisions to make. Antonio Johnson's another one that fans will certainly be watching. But I think the thing with Achane and the biggest difference for me in this game, A&M was able to stay in kind of those manageable 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s most of the game, and it kept Connor Wigman from having to do too much. He managed the game really, really well. You talk about Wigman. How about him coming in down the stretch here? No interceptions to close out the season. For a freshman to do that is extremely impressive.
No, for sure. I mean, he did have the one against, was it Auburn?
Auburn, that was a close call.
That ended up being, called back. It was sort of thrown right to the guy. But, yeah, I mean, A&M in general threw a whole bunch of interceptions this year.
Yeah.
And just, Wigman coming in and not throwing any. I mean, your quarterback's going to throw some. I mean, you want them taking some risks, and I think he did that. But they're going to throw some. But, yeah, it just showed, sort of his awareness and everything. And then you talked about the A&M not being behind the chains. I mean, they converted 10 first downs. I haven't looked, but that's got to – 10 third downs. That's got to be a team high for this year's 10 out of 15. When they came out from the second half and they threw on the first play and then, ended up going 3-and-out. I was like, oh no, here we go again. Not this. And then that big fumble recovery just, switched the momentum. And they actually gave the ball to A-Chain again. I was afraid he wasn't going to get the ball the whole second half.
I was watching with somebody who has watched a good amount of A&M this year and said, it seems like one team made halftime adjustments and the other didn't. And I was thinking in my head, we've seen those stories many times so far.
Quite often. I don't know why Jimbo wants to abandon the run, like when it's working, and and he didn't. I mean, that's got to be a career high in carries, I'm assuming too.
It's a career high in carries and yards.
I mean, I wouldn't imagine he's had anywhere close to that before. So, I mean, Jimbo. A&M needs more depth at running back, and then of course they lose L.J. Johnson, but I mean, which was expected. But yeah, that Jimbo will keep running it. Did at least show somewhat of a sign of adapting. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why they just abandoned the run in the second half, but they always seem to.
They always seem to, and they seem to kind of want to turn it into this explosive game and lose an idea of what was already working. I know the idea is to be able to go off play action and work some of those things, but your biggest weapon is still Devon Achane, and they rode him all the way to a win. And it does help to end the year on a high note. And I think when you're trying to make sure that you can keep this roster intact heading into next year, I know there's already been some positive tweet. There have been some guys that enter the portal, like you mentioned, Ish Harris and L.J. Johnson and Elijah Judy and Donald Harris which are not surprising.
So far have been unexpected, which is a good thing. A&M still has not lost a player that it wants to keep. They will. I mean, I'm not trying to just – I mean, this, especially with all the freshmen, the good plus. But, it's in portal history. They haven't lost a player they've tried to keep, and that's still the case going on. It's about playing time for the 4 guys that have been out so far.
No doubt. And, Walter Nolan's a guy that shared on social media this weekend that he was excited about, where this team was heading and locked in and ready to kind of get back for next year. That would certainly be good news. Keeping a guy like him and Evan Stewart, if you can keep Moose Muhammad, some of those guys, McKinley Jackson, shared a message on social media that seemed to indicate he was coming back for another year.
We don't really know what it indicated, but he did type Y4 at the bottom, which people took to be year 4. Yeah,
exactly.
It was a little confusing there.
It was a little bit confusing, kind of reading it. I was looking for the "I will be returning" in as a senior, and there was nothing in there on that. You kind of had to read between the tea leaves a little bit, but the indications, at least that folks seem to be taking from him, are that he'll be back for another year, which would be big. When he was healthy this year, he made a big difference in the middle of the run game and did battle an elbow injury and gutted that out. But, to have him back would certainly be a big factor. And Jimbo Fisher said the next step now is kind of turning their attention towards the recruiting trail after a quick break. We'll look at that with the early signing period less than a month away. Welcome back into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I'm Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, now the attention starts to turn towards the early signing period coming up on December 21st, about 3 weeks away now, and just over there, and it's going to be kind of a sprint to the finish for A&M. A little unique this year. There's a dead period in place until Thursday, I believe, before the staff can really begin hitting the road, and we'll be out to see just about all their commits and remaining targets. And I think this win does give them at least a little bit of momentum to be able to kind of sell, okay, this is the vision. It's at least with the commits on my end, I feel like gives them able to sell, okay, this is when everything's together, this is what we can be, and this is what we envision being. And from there, that's pretty much all. They obviously don't have a ton of momentum coming off a 5-7 season, but it at least does give them something positive to take out on the recruiting trail.
No, for sure. And I mean, recruits don't pay a ton of attention to the
Mhm.
current season, but I mean, A&M's obviously you notice A&M just they weren't good this year. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of close losses, but still losses. I mean, not 1-2 SEC games. I saw somebody on Twitter said Florida State won as many SEC games as A&M did because they beat LSU in Florida.
Maybe the LSU,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so but just not winning the SEC games. But really, I mean, with the current team, we talked about this. It gives that win gives A&M some momentum and says, "Hey, look at the future." Because I mean, you had Moose Muhammad should be back, but freshmen like Connor Wigman and Evan Stewart and a bunch of these freshmen contributing. And so you're seeing, okay, the future does look sort of bright. They're starting to really, come close to reaching their potential. So I think recruits liked seeing that as well. Just saying, hey, even in a loss, with a lost season, that last game looked good, and I mean, A&M will probably be ranked pretty high next year just because of that game and the amount of players that'll be returning. So, yeah, recruiting is going to be tough. I mean, there's only 11 commitments, which is it's not many at all.
Yeah.
They're going to hit the transfer portal really hard. That opens a week from today, next Monday. They're going to hit the transfer portal really hard. And then I think you'll see A&M sign some guys in February again that go unsigned. But yeah, it is going to be, with like the Tony Mitchells and the Marcel Reeds trying to end, they made, obviously still trying to get Peyton Bowen. That's a long shot, but, really trying to flip guys before that early signing period. You're going to see Jimbo out and about a lot of places.
No doubt. Yeah, Marcel Reed's a guy that was in town this past weekend, committed to Ole Miss. Interesting having him on campus 3 weeks before the early signing period. I think A&M put their good foot forward, checking with people around him. They talked about having a good relationship with the staff, some of those good conversations. That does not mean he's necessarily going to flip, but it means A&M did certainly put their best foot forward, and a win over LSU certainly helps. Ole Miss keep being able to keep Lane Kiffin obviously helps in their direction, and that could have been part of the trip was the uncertainty around
Oh, for
Lane
sure.
Kiffin that lasted late into the week. But I'm sure A&M will try to get into an in home with him and see if they can kind of build off this momentum. But there is a lot of confidence on the Ole Miss side to be able
Sorry
to
for the
keep
guest
him. Yeah,
star
sorry for the
in
guest
the
stars.
background.
And
Apparently, there's
we've
some
got
dogs
a
running around
guest
the
star
neighborhood.
that wants to
Yeah,
we've got a guest star that wants to weigh in on A&M recruiting
yeah.
as well. But that's certainly one of the things I think they'll try to get in with Marcel Reed. It's not a guarantee at all, but at least A&M was able to get the win and 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 see what it goes from there. But I'm with you. I think they'll certainly sign some guys in in February as well and fill out this class. And I know they don't have any skill players signed right now. You and I have both been around and seen this, that with coaching changes and things like that, there's going to be opportunities that come up late where guys that weren't on the radar
Yeah.
become available or reopen their recruitments. And so there's still a lot left to be settled in this class.
Yeah, with all the coaching changes and everything, the weekend, really Sunday by itself was already a crazy day with decommitments, and we'll see even more going forward. Just when schools settle on a head coach and kids may not feel like it's a good mix. Also, we talked about Marcel Reed want to see what Lane Kiffin did. I know this isn't recruiting, but did you? Am I the only one who thought that Lane Kiffin almost stayed at Ole Miss just to screw with with John Ossoff or wherever he is, the guy that said
Yeah, John
Kiffin's a
Oss.
done deal and all that. I went, and Kiffin put had the press
But
release about him transferring and everything like
I
That I was like, I think he stayed just to spite that guy.
and I will give him props that he did show up at the press conference on Friday, on Thursday night. It would be
Thursday after
when
the
they
game,
played
yeah.
Thursday after the game, and Lane Kiffin certainly had some things to say to him, and I did
Oh,
like
he
his.
called him out to his face. That's like, I mean, he should have. I understand that, but still, that's rough, man. That takes some guts to do that.
I thought about injecting myself into it for a moment, just to, if you saw his report later on, despite heavy interest shown to Auburn.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's
Yeah,
not.
he's the one who had. My sources said it was likely. It's like you said done deal, and it also
you
said
said
no
done
offer has
deal.
been made. Nobody knew what that meant, but
Yeah,
yeah, that
both
did.
sides were kind of denying it. It was an entertaining week to follow along with that whole situation, and just the back and forth. I also loved kudos to uh, to Mississippi State for bringing out the printed response.
Yes, when they won.
That was just for needing some excitement the final week of the year. That was entertaining to kind of follow, and we've certainly kind of hit silly season now where coaching rumors and all those sorts of things are going to continue to pop up, and we should see some coordinators going. I know uh, there was a post on our board today about Steve Adazio and the Broncos that was kind of a joke coming off of his time at Colorado State. So there's going to be a lot of things on social media. Not everything's true.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we do expect A&M to make a
we
number of
do,
changes on the
we
coaching
do,
staff, though. That'll
we
probably
do.
happen in the next couple weeks. Not the announcements of the new guys, but the announcements that some coaches have decided or mutually agreed
Yeah.
upon. Or A&M now, when they've been firing like other sports coaches, they say, "Oh, they've parted ways with." I was like,
Parted
we know what
ways.
that means they've been fired. But I think the offense will see almost a total overhaul. The defense
Yeah.
will see some movement as well. So it's going to be interesting to follow that going forward and to see what recruits, think about, the new guys that come in. Do they have great relationships with the current coaches that it may affect them, or, are they open? Do they love the idea of possibly new direction? I mean, we're going to find all that out.
No doubt there'll be some guys that'll have an effect on. Of course, one will be to watch is Chase Basantis, and he's obviously got a strong relationship with Steve Adazio. If they bring in a new offensive line coach, what impact will that have, especially so close to the early signing period? But to your point, new coaches also come with relationships as well, and are there kids that they have
Mhm.
relationships with that A&M can maybe build off of. I do think it is important to note too, looking back on closing out the season with a win, a guy I think it could have a positive impact with is Javon Thomas, because we
Yeah,
talked about it
he
a
was
couple
waiting to
weeks.
see that.
We talked about it. He was waiting to see a couple weeks ago. He said, "I just want to see A&M get over the hump. I just want to see them be able to put everything together and get over the hump." Now A&M was able to put it together in the final game of the season against a school that's recruited him pretty hard at times throughout the year, and obviously against a top 5 opponent, and I expect that'll be a guy that A&M is out on the road and is among the early stops that they want to get out and see.
Oh, yeah.
TCU and Texas Tech are 2 schools that have pushed to try to get him in town. Texas is pushed as well. I don't know if they'll end up getting a visit or not, but I do think he'll take some visits in December, but A&M being able to kind of build off this win should certainly help. And we'll certainly be back next Monday to break down where coaches are heading and some of these in-home visits that'll start to take place really soon.
And,
Just a really
some
important
transfer portal stuff with names officially in there for the first time.
Yep. When we join you next Monday, that'll be the first day that guys can enter into the portal, and it's sure to be kind of a wild day. Talking to some people over the past couple of weeks, I've mentioned I'm interested to see how it goes, and people have said me too. We have no idea how this is all going to go. It's probably going to be kind of a crazy first couple of days with kind of a window of it's 45 days starting next Monday. So whenever you see guys now, keep in mind, whenever you see guys saying they're going to enter the portal, they're tweeting their intention that they'll be able to join the portal on December 5th. So before then, guys won't be able to be contacted and all that. So I do think that's an important thing to keep in mind. But be sure to stay locked in on GigEm247. We'll have all the latest on the transfer portal news, recruiting news. Sure to be a busy couple of weeks leading up to the early signing period and into February as well with National Signing Day. Be sure to give us a like and share on YouTube if you're watching on there, and a 5-star review and subscribe if you listen to this on the podcast version on Spotify or Apple iTunes. Until then, everybody enjoy your week, and we'll be back soon.